Day 16 of Algebra I, calculating rate of change, also known as slope. So rate of change is just a fancy way of saying what is the slope. Luckily for us, lines only have one slope. It never changes. It's always exactly the same. So let's go ahead and jump into the notes. So again, as a side note, before we begin this, I just want you to remember, slope is the same thing as m, same thing as change in y over change in x. Here's the formula for it. Some people call it rise over run, and it's also referred to as rate of change. Remember what I said, people in math like to make stuff complicated. They like to make it seem like we don't know what we're doing, but we totally know. All of these things are exactly the same. Slope, m, change in y over change in x, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, rise over run, and rate of change. All exactly the same. Okay, so in order for us to create a line, we need exactly 2 points. To calculate a slope, or also called my rate of change, I can use these 2 points, and I can use a table, or I can use the formula. In all three forms, you see a change in y divided by a change in x. So that means that slope, letter m, is also rise over run, change in y over change in x, and it also tells us up, down at the top, right, left at the bottom. Okay, so based on this information, let's go ahead and try and calculate the slope for a few different examples. So first here they tell me, find the slope between these 2 points. Okay, so first of all, let me go ahead and highlight my x's, right? I'm going to highlight my y's. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just plot these points just because I'm going to show you all the different ways we can do this, okay? So, -4, -6, that's here. +8, -3, that's here. So I know for sure that these guys go exactly through the corners of the boxes. All right, and so we have our line. Okay, so we've already talked about this before. We can totally just count spaces, reduce the number, right? So I see here that it goes exactly through that corner. So I can also use that one instead of going from here to here. So I'm going to use this shorter point, and I'm going to go ahead and do that in a different color just to make it easier to see. All right, let's go ahead and count. So I'm going to go 1 up and 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. So m equals change in y over change in x. So I went up 1 and 4 to the right. So my slope should be 1 over 4, right? The formula is exactly what we said just earlier, right? Some people may write it a little bit differently, but it's always the same setup. So what I like to do is anytime that I'm going to quote unquote manually calculate this, the first thing that I like to do is I like to write out the formula. And I always write it out this way, and the reason is because it will help me remember all the things I need to know about slope. So every time I do this, I usually write this out like this. Now, if you notice something, these guys both have negatives. That means we have to be extra special careful with them. So whenever I'm going to fill these in manually, I always write it up in my negative. So just in case the numbers that I'm plugging in have a negative, I can go ahead and I can also make sure and include that so I don't get an incorrect answer. So here's the thing. These are guys over here I call the 2's, and these guys are the 1's. So they have to come as a set, which means if I say that this guy over here is x2, then this one must be y2. And the same thing applies for x1, y1, etc. Okay? So what I like to do is, because the 2's are in front and they're the ones subtracting, is I like to always pick the biggest numbers to go there. So I look at my numbers, -4, +8. I'm comparing the x's. Looks like +8 is bigger. -6, -3. -3 is bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that these are my 2's and these are my 1's, okay? And I'm going to write below them x1. Oh, mixing up my numbers here already. Okay. x1, y1, x2, y2. Now I'm going to go ahead and place them in their respective places. So -3, +8, -6, -4. Now notice we got these double negatives. I already know 2 negatives make a positive. And I like to circle it just to remind myself I already changed something. So now I can go ahead and I can go through and start reducing. The first thing I do is I simplify everything at the top, simplify everything at the bottom, then I start reducing. So I see -3 plus 6, that's the same thing as 6 minus 3, so 3/12. And I can reduce both of those by 3, 1/4. And it matches exactly. So good, we understand that. Let's try it again. So here they're asking me rate of change between -5, 4, 5, 2. All right. So first thing, I'm going to go ahead and label domain, x-axis, range, y-axis. All right. So I got that. Now I'm going to go ahead and plot these. -5, +4. 5, +2. Okay. I got that. And my line continues out forever, of course. So now I'm going to go ahead and look through these. I'm going to say, all right, I'm trying to see if there's any point to go through the corner. It looks like I do have one here, my y-intercept. So it's +3. So I'm going to go ahead and count from there to this point out here, okay? So I have to go down 1. So m equals change in y over change in x. Down 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 to the right. Okay, so that's exactly what I should get whenever I calculate this manually. So let's go ahead and do that manually. And I'm going to cover this little table up because it doesn't do anything but confuse us. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and say slope is change in y over change in x, which is that fancy formula. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it with negatives already in place. Now I'm going to look at my numbers, -5 and 4, 5 and 2. I'm going to say that these guys are going to be my 2's because they're bigger. Let's go ahead and plug them in. 5, 2, -5, +4. Okay. So over here I see a double negative. 2 minus 4, -2/10. -1/5. And that matches exactly. Okay? So, all I want you guys to do is go ahead and work on these two example questions just to make sure you understand it. Remembering, slope is change in y over change in x, which is just my formula. And whenever I write them in, I always put my negatives first to make sure I don't miss anything. See you guys next time.